All right, good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting of the Merrimack Town Council to order. Shall rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yes, Mrs. Harrington is excused again this evening. Announcements: due to the inclement weather of the town hall offices and the transfer station will be closed tomorrow, Tuesday, January 27th, and will reopen at 10 a.m. on Wednesday, January 28th. We hope. I'm confident in the ability of our crews to take care of that. Yeah, it's only like 70, 80. Yeah, I mean, really. Okay, Thursday, January 29th at 7 p.m. here in the Matthew Thornton Room. There will be a special meeting that is a work session regarding the Northeast Energy Direct Pipeline Project. This is something that we added onto our agenda, onto our schedule. That's a work session, and what we'll have for an agenda for that evening will be posted soon. It is posted. Okay. Thursday, February 12, 2015, at 7 p.m. here in the Matthew Thornton Room is a regular council meeting and the budget hearing that's required under state law.
Point of clarification, Mr. Chairman. The meeting for Thursday night is open to the general public.
Oh, yes. It is a public meeting.
Thank you for clarifying.
It's just that it's a work session, so you're going to see a real abbreviated agenda item format. So,
Correct.
okay.
ABBRB period.
Anything else? No. All right. This evening is the attempt or the opportunity to take action on the town budget in anticipation of the public hearing on February the 12th. As I've said before, this is not the last opportunity that we will have to do something with the budget if we so decide. But we have to put something together that will be presented to the public for the public hearing so that they might comment on it. So from that standpoint, on February the 12th, we may change our mind about something, or circumstances or events may require us to take other action. But once we go through that process, we're done until we get to the deliberative session in March. Okay. So, Dan?
If I could maybe kick things off, Mr. Chairman?
Well, I was going to ask the town manager if she had anything
that's fine
to
too.
add or to start, or since
Okay.
that's the budget she's presented to us.
Okay.
It's also one of her last opportunities.
Well, if I
to,
could just mention that that
year,
spreadsheet
right?
in front of you was what I was going to discuss, so everybody had a chance to read it.
I got something
Okay.
else.
Okay.
All right, I'm not going to discuss that.
Okay.
What I wanted to say was that in reviewing this current year's budget that we're in, 2014-15, excuse me, 2014-15, we have reviewed the revenue and expenditure line items and have found that because there have been so many retirements, there have been 5 in the fire department and 2 in the police department and 2 in public works department, that and then it takes time for recruitment, and there's periods of time where no health insurance is being paid for a person who was anticipated to be employed for the whole year. there is some significant savings in this current year's budget. So some of the discussion that will take place tonight will concern those things. There's approximately 140 some odd thousand dollars, he's gone, 140 some odd thousand dollars worth, is that right?
Yes.
Worth of unexpended appropriations for this year that we're very confident in not changing. And therefore, we are requesting or suggesting that you take some of the expenditures for various items, one-time items, and that you have in your budget, and use that money to pay for some of these things like guns, like the first part of the communications system for the police department, and that kind of thing this year that we're in, which would, again, require additional action by the end of this fiscal year, with the understanding how it flows into the following year. If that makes sense. Sorry, I butchered that. No.
So what you're suggesting is that there are what they call budget lapses.
That's
That
right.
would be-
I'm going to keep my mouth shut from now on.
That we would have the opportunity to make some changes or to take care of some things. I think that your very straightforward thing about guns is that we are not arming an army here. We are merely replacing the equipment in the police department, if you haven't been following the budget deliberations. So that may cause some people to have a little anxiety, especially given that other towns have been looking at Bearcats, or whatever they're called. All we're trying to do is to replace the equipment that the police department has, and it is serve the town, the department well. But as things of that sort, they tend to wear out, and they need to be considered to be replaced. So I think that you provided us with a spreadsheet that outlines some of those.
Yes, I provided you with a spreadsheet that shows the different things that I've heard from various council members. So certain things like the recycling attendant and that kind of thing, different council members have called me up and said, I would like this, I want to do that, but I don't want to increase the tax rate. So how do I go about doing that? So what Paul and I have done is we have, if you look underneath the thick blue line, it shows you in categories what is going to, how you can achieve the things that you asked me about. So I'll let you take it from there.
Okay, Dan.
Thank you. To dovetail off of Eileen, probably I think for maybe all of us, this budget season, the biggest item was the chief of police asking for 3 more men. To me, it's probably the biggest budget impact that we had outside of capital reserve funds for the radio system that we want to bring online in the next couple of years. As many of you know, a lot of us maybe felt uncomfortable about the special POP unit, but I think we heard that the chief's greater mission was to somehow give him some more manpower. So in that endeavor, I asked Eileen to put together a package including 2 new officers. But at the same time, this is why this spreadsheet is here, was to try and add those 2 new officers without implementing a higher tax rate, which was previously prepared by her back in December. So when you see this spreadsheet, I wanted you to keep in mind that that's what this goal was. And so when you see some of the bigger lines of the communications equipment, the 54,000, the fire with the defibrillators at 30,000,
Easy for you to say.
solid waste was the pickup truck, the part-time attendant, and Counselor Woods, guns and rifles, and Counselor Woods' initiative of trying to put 20,000 towards a new highway garage architect plan, and being reminded by Counselor Boyd that since we didn't want it on the ballot this year, one of the reasons was we did not want to present the same plan or the same project to the voters because nobody was comfortable about presenting the same plan. Therefore, if we don't put some money aside to have a new a general contractor maybe redesign it in some way to make it more palatable to the public, it seemed like if we didn't put something in there, then it couldn't get done. Because I think we all agreed that presenting the same exact, some of us agreed that it wasn't, presenting the same plan wasn't good enough. And another big item was, another new item came about from earlier in the week. I wanted to put aside some legal fund money when it pertains to the pipe, Kinder Morgan pipeline. That if we don't actually put some money aside for some legal advice, it just seemed like a good idea. Tonight would be the night to do that. So all that being said, what the spreadsheet represents was, I thought, with working with Eileen and Paul, was to hear some of the things that you guys were saying here, put it all on one sheet, and then that way it can be presented with, if you agreed to the 2 new officers, we would still at the end of the day have an 8-cent increase on the tax rate, which was back in December, I believe, was started off with as 11 cents when it was first presented December 4th. And then after the items like you talked about the insurance and the lapses in personnel, it became lower.
I presented a budget that was 8 cents.
It was
Yeah.
in December, on the
Yeah.
December 4th?
November that I came in at 11 cents. Dave.
Okay,
And
okay.
I adjusted it.
So my goal all along was to maintain that number, and without their help, by adding the 2 new police officers, it couldn't have been done. I had a much more easier approach. Eileen convinced me that it wasn't going to work. I just wanted to, let's say, cut 200 grand from paving. I'm even simplifying my approach, but it was going to be 50,000 here, 50,000 there, and in the end, she said because of the capital expenditures and some other items, it needed to be tweaked a little bit better than that, and with her help, it worked out that way. So I present this to you, but also with an open mind that if there's anything on here, let's openly discuss it and change whatever you want to, but that was my thought for tonight.
Okay. Any other comments from council members? Yes.
I forgot to give you my sales pitch basically on why I want 2 officers. I suppose that would probably be rational. It's not, well, not yet. I wanted to explain the reasons why. One, the force has not had an increase in manpower in several years. To the credit of the police chief 3 years ago, when the mall was about to go up, he said he wasn't going to ask for any more men until it was proved to himself that it was needed. So that being said, that's what he said. He hasn't ever come to us before in the 5 years that I've been here asking for an increase in manpower, so I take that very seriously. This year he did. The second reason was when I start looking at the budget and we're allocating almost $250,000 in overtime, that number to me seems a little startling. That may be the magic number for me that says we should start looking into hiring another person. If you look at last year's budget, we had approached 200,000, and the year before that, it was over 150,000, I believe. So those were really my 2 main reasons, was that for the first time in several years, we have never really replaced the 2 gentlemen who did retire, and coupled with the overtime budget reaching extremely high, in my opinion, I thought this was the year to do it.
Okay. Questions for Councilor Dwyer? Tom?
So as the chief came here and presented, he actually asked for 3 officers, 1 sergeant and 2 main officers. I'm assuming correct me please, that you're thinking that if we don't need the sergeant to control that unit or something, we can add 2 officers and get basically the same effect of functional boots on the ground, if you will. But
That was my thinking, and as well as adding a third person and the expense of the third person, I couldn't find another place to, at the same rate, balance the budget the way I wanted to. At this time, I thought 3 was too much to the respect of the chief. I just thought that and maybe even 2 was just a little bit easier to swallow, budget-wise, than 3 guys. Now, maybe another year or 2 budget season, there's going to be another opportunity where we review the department again. But for this year, I thought it was just a little easier with the 2.
okay, and just for clarity, it looks like that's a fully loaded cost, is that right?
That's right, included benefits and pension, the whole future,
For the officers?
yes,
And that,
for 10 months. It was also based on the input from the chief that the hiring wouldn't take place until September.
wow,
And then, so that budget number goes into the 16 budget as well. So it's presented as starting in September.
okay. And that replaces the 28,000 that Eileen had put in for overtime
Exactly.
in lieu of the 2 officers or the team that the chief had asked for?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Bill?
Thank you. I think it's more of a comment to Councilor Dwyer. I agree with your assessment on the officers piece. Back in 2010, we had 40 full-time police officers, and we've been operating with 38, and I look at bringing 2 officers back into the fold brings us up to 2010 staffing levels. I agree with you. I don't think that the chief would have come to this body if he didn't feel he didn't have a need for additional manpower. And I actually take it from the perspective of looking at it from a boots-on-the-ground perspective as opposed to creating a new unit. The chief is asking for 2 additional police officers to do whatever the chief is going to task them with. And I think with the growth that we've seen, that we've talked about, some of the new housing developments that are in the pipeline that are going to be built, I think it's good to be proactive and, to be proactive in this regard so that we're focusing on future policing needs that could arise as a consequence. Plus, I also think it's good planning. When you bring on 2 new police officers, they may not understand the lay of the land or the streets and the roads of Merrimack. So I think there's going to be a little bit of a learning curve once they come through the academy and actually, wear the Merrimack badge. They're going to have to learn a little bit about our community. So I think it's a bit of a learning curve for them as well. So I think, for me, from my perspective, I think the timing is very good. The NED pipeline consultant, I actually, when I spoke with Eileen this afternoon, I wanted 50,000. I really think we need to be thinking long-term as it relates to the FERC process. The FERC process is a 3+ year, it's a 3+ year process from pre-application, application, all the way to whether or not they get the permit to build. I think we've started a conversation with some of our other communities, so I think there's a unique opportunity where we can cost share and bundle that particular piece with some of our other communities, because we're not going to be hiring a regular attorney. We're going to be potentially hiring somebody that knows FERC and speaks FERC, because the FERC process is an arcane language. It's almost like Sanskrit. You need somebody that really understands what is being spoken at the agency level at every step of the way. So I think it's really vital, since we are the largest community that's impacted by this, to have a voice. And I think, putting money towards legal costs, whether it be through an energy attorney or actually getting involved as an intervener at FERC, how that all unfolds, I don't know, but I think we really need to put some money away towards that particular piece of the puzzle. I'm okay with $25,000. As long as we've got something there that signifies a significant commitment to the process, I'm all for it. And lastly, I do support the cut of the part-time skate park attendant and putting those monies back into Parks and Rec. I think when Director Kasparis came and talked that we were one of 2 communities that have an attendant at that skate park, I think that spoke very loudly about how the other communities are actually trusting the users of the skateboard park. And I think we can take that savings and trust it with math to work with the fire chief, work with the police chief, come up with some type of video monitoring, video surveillance, maybe increase the level of lighting at that park, maybe make some improvements, and then as a part of hopefully with a new and improved skateboard policy, we can actually open it to the general public, the youth of our community with some specific guidelines, and keep it open maybe from dawn to dusk or what have you. But I think I think we need to trust the youth of our community who use that facility, be able to give them unfettered access to the park within reason. I know that there had been some complaints about not being open on specific holidays, and I think the complaints are justified. They should be open on holidays. Give the guys or the girls something to, take their skateboards or their roller skates or what have you to use the park. So I think what's been presented is good, and I'm happy with it. And I thank you, Dan, and I thank the staff for putting this together. But that's where I stand for those three particular pieces. That's where I stand. Thank you.
Lon?
Sure. Without micromanaging, maybe the two new officers that are proposed could begin to learn about the town at the skateboard park. But it's just a comment. Dan kind of took the words out of my mouth about the architect and engineering piece for the highway garage. I agree with the effort. I do want the general public to know that the intent would be that we would be looking to include a bond article in the 2016-2017 warrant. Just so no mistake is made, it's not just funny money to placate some people. My intent, and I know the council's intent, is very serious about bringing something forward. So that, again, I suggested early on in the process the legal consultant, or the fees for the consultant for the pipeline. I'm very interested in seeing that project to its conclusion, whatever that may be, with all of the proper force and effect that the town of Merrimack and other entities can muster. Solid waste disposal, part-time attendant, that was a no-brainer for me when it was proposed. I will say that it's a bit aggressive, looking for 3 tons plus a week, but go get it, Rick. You can do it. Thank you.
Other comments? Finley?
I think my only concern about the whole document is, in fact, the paving account. It's always been a real thing with me, and I know we've done much better than we had in the past.
I didn't think I nicked it too bad.
No, you didn't. You didn't. 5%?
That's what you call the low-hanging fruit, right?
Yeah, the hanging fruit.
Yeah,
It is.
unfortunately, it's always a low-hanging fruit.
And it,
Oh, right.
it is about 5%, right?
Yeah, but as Eileen mentioned, we're doing DW Highway this year.
Which is huge.
was a big
Yep.
one, right?
Right.
Yep.
So I don't know if an ultimate motion will be for the whole piece. It's not. Okay, good.
No.
And sometimes we do that.
That's fine. It doesn't have to be.
Well, let's put it this way. There's no motion on the floor at this time,
That's true.
okay? And
I guess
I would prefer that we go through these individually.
Sure.
And just so that everybody knows
Yep.
what we're talking about, what the numbers are,
Yep.
okay? And how we feel about particular issues.
Yep. My purpose, as I said, was a big picture,
So you-
and the biggest item was the two officers.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I would get the ball rolling on line item, 5. I would move that the Merrimack Town Council add $158,178 to cover the cost for 2 new police officers to include benefits and appropriate withholdings for 10/12ths of a year.
Those are not departmental indicators for those budget items, right? Because '05 is the communications budget. So I presume you're looking at '04, which is the police department. Yes, I
working
know,
off
I
the
know.
sheet.
Yeah, okay. So just for clarification, those numbers just indicate the individual items and not the accounts in the budget
Correct.
that we're dealing with.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Okay. What is being shown to us on the sheet is two new officers to include benefits for 10/12ths of a year, 83.3%, by the way.
Fuzzy math.
And to help deal with those particular issues, there were riffles. Somebody goofed. Somebody.
I was just going to say ruffles.
Somebody fat-fingered it.
And by the way, the motion isn't complete. I have to offset the
You don't,
the addition with the,
You don't have to.
I don't.
No.
not yet.
Okay, thank you.
What I would offer is that, you know, the sheet that was presented to us by the town manager shows the purchase of the guns and rifle replacement for a reduction that would be 30,500 less, overtime $28,056, and then capital reserve fund reductions for communications, fire, and solid waste because of the purchase of 3 items: the cardiac defibrillator, monitor, and transmitter for the fire department, the communications radio-based station for the police department, and the stake body truck for solid waste would come out of this year's budget with the budget lapses that we talked about at the beginning of the meeting.
Correct.
So there would be no need to withdraw those funds from the capital reserve fund. Or is that the contribution to it, or just the withdrawal? The contribution?
That's, the contribution is above
Okay,
the black line, which we can get to, blue line, which we can
okay.
get to.
So that shows a net reduction of $14,378,000 with those shifts. Is that? 378. Yeah, okay. $14,378, right. Thank you, Tom. Okay. Other comments, Eileen, on this, or Paul? No. All right, so that's the piece here. Anything else on your,
No, I'll let my previous comments stand in support of the motion.
okay, other comments from the council? Tom?
So you mentioned all these other things. The motion, I think, was just to add the 158, 178, is that
Right.
right?
Right, and I
Yes.
wanted to add the reductions to that, and I was told
I
that
don't have any problem with going over those differently. I just wanted to make sure that, because he did include them, that we weren't taking it as a package,
I agree.
or we are. Just clarification. It's just the increase in the police that we're talking about with this motion.
At this time? Yes.
And I would support that.
Okay.
Just as long as it's clear enough to keep DRA happy, right?
That's what I was looking at.
Well, actually, it's a trust thing. We're apparently trusting that other things will be offset as we continue on.
That's true, that's true.
But a lot of
Well,
time
we
on
have
it.
the
Yes.
option to make
Well, yeah.
those offsets, right?
Right, that's right.
Right, but it might, and it's not for this for me, but it might be a situation where if I go, okay, I'm going to pass this now because I'm anticipating it'll be offset elsewhere, and all of a sudden it doesn't pass the offset, I might not have supported, and again, not for this,
Yeah.
but I might not have supported the issue in the first place. So I just trust you guys.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
Don't do that.
Tom,
Yes.
you could vote to do the offsets now. Just do the offsets and then,
I was going to make that one complete motion so that it was very clear.
no, but I mean, do the whole thing.
Do the whole
I mean,
thing.
it's a suggestion.
That's what I wanted to do. Sorry.
That's fine.
Okay.
Okay.
So Who had the second on that? Did you have the second?
I had the second.
You had the second, okay.
So the motion would be to add 158,178 for 2 new police officers for 83 and 33% of a year, including benefits, to be offset by $30,500 towards guns and rifles, $28,056 in overtime, $54,000 in a capital reserve fund reduction, $30,000 from a capital reserve fund reduction, and $30,000 from a capital reserve fund reduction.
Can we just be a little bit more specific? So describe the capital
You gotta-
reserve fund.
Well,
Communications capital reserve.
Communications capital reserve fund reduction of $54,000. The fire capital reserve fund reduction, $30,000. And the solid waste capital reserve fund reduction, the amount of $30,000.
And these are all accounts 8510 in those particular departments.
Did you say 85?
85, that's what it has here.
I thought it was 8910.
No, that's up above.
It's 8510.
Okay. Further discussion? Tom?
I just want it to be clear, and I know it's been said about 3 times, and my saying it again isn't necessarily going to clear it up, but it's going to assuage my mind. These reductions in the capital reserve fund deposits that we're talking about are because we're taking funds of, what did you call it, lapses in
Budget
budgeting?
lapses.
They call-
Budget lapses.
The technical term is budget lapses, where you have an excess,
We have an excess in funds
Right.
approved or appropriated for this
Right.
year because of
and
retirements
not
or
spent
or
for
non-retire-
various and sundry
non-hire.
reasons.
And we're actually going to be able to expend that money this year to cover those 3 items, the
Correct.
defibrillators, the base station, and the stake body truck. So it's not like we're cutting back on our capital reserve fund deposits. We're actually taking those expenditures and moving them. The guns and rifles replacement, again, is if we can move those forward to this year, then as you pointed out at the beginning of the meeting, we're replacing equipment. We're not building up equipment. We're not building a little army in Merrimack. And the overtime had been added in by the town manager in the first place before the thought of replacing adding the 2 officers was there. So it is a good set of balances to try and zero out that additional cost for the year. Thank you.
Anything else? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 600.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that the town council appropriate $12,210 for a part-time attendant in the solid waste department to be offset by $12,210 in solid waste disposal reduction.
Second.
For a net of 0.
For a net of 0. Thank you.
Other questions? Any other questions? Tom? Yeah.
Well, I just, again, for clarity, because not everybody paid attention to all of the meetings, as I understand it, we had increased the solid waste disposal number, line 8355, by about 12,000, anticipating a need. And if we bring in this attendant, that need hopefully is reduced or goes away based on that additional person helping to monitor what's going into the transfer station versus what's going into the recycle bins, et cetera. And the thought is that that balances out and gives us an additional set of eyes at the transfer station to keep things running smoothly and properly, as opposed to just throwing money at it for hauling stuff to the waste incinerator. So this is a net benefit to Merrimack to do this. It does bring another part-time attendant on board. It's another employee, but it's not nearly the expenses that it could be otherwise.
Bill?
And just to echo Councilor Koenig's comments, Steve Duman, who is the supervisor down at the transfer station, said it was a trial basis. Just wants to see if it will work for 1 year. If it works, great. If it doesn't, then we can do away with it. So it's we're only doing it for a year and see how it works out.
Okay. Understanding that if they fall short on the savings side, that it's going to come out of other parts of the budget. Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
If I
It's a challenge for them.
That's what I was going to say. That it's a challenge for them, and it's also a challenge that new signage at the transfer station will be put in place, and a more aggressive campaign
Talk about
will be
micromanaging.
made at the transfer station along with this new individual that will get more people to recycle in town, and therefore lower our tonnage that leaves for the landfills.
Is that what you call a check and raise?
Like Smokey the Bear and Forest Fires, we could have Dan Dwyer and solid waste and recycling. Dan Dwyer says, separate your waste.
Easy, boy.
Put pictures all over the transfer station.
All right, all right.
I'll talk to you about that. Part of the time should be in the schools doing exactly what you're saying.
Okay.
Move the question, Mr. Chairman.
Question's been moved. Are there any other comments? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Carries 600.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we cut the part-time skate park attendant in the amount of $6,900 and allocate those funds to Parks and Recreation for programming.
Second.
Comments? I have a question. Is there anything that this would be targeted? Would this be targeted for?
It was suggested to me that it might be for, and Counselor Boyd had said something earlier about surveillance equipment or cameras or better lighting for the skate park.
Okay.
I just put programming because I hadn't spoken to him about it.
So it could be equipment.
It could be equipment, yeah.
Would you rather I alter my motion to reflect equipment, Mr. Chairman?
Well, it should be attached to some budget line.
Well, it was
And it is, and here it is attached to 8374, but,
Mr. Chairman, it's being attached to the Parks and Rec Department.
If you wanted to, you could put it through 8505 infrastructure.
I like that. Infrastructure, 8505.
0113 8505 infrastructure.
Okay.
well, okay.
That's where we're at.
So, Mr. Chairman, I would modify my motion to reflect that it's a $6,900 cut of the part-time skate park attendant and being moved to line item 113-8505. Is that right, Paul?
Yes, yes.
For infrastructure improvements at the skate park.
Okay,
I'll accept that.
okay.
And if I may, Mr. Chair.
Yes, you may.
At the meeting today, actually, we talked to Chief Doyle about this and with Matt Kasparius about potentially putting up a wireless camera, and we just haven't had enough time to get some of those information back. But there was conversation today about that, in fact, putting up surveillance and at least having a tape so that if there is something going on there, they can go to the tapes and see what's going on with the children of this town and things of that sort. So there was that discussion between the parties.
Are you going to have to go to New York for confirmation of that, like they do in the NFL? Tom?
I'm opposed to this. I don't understand why we are suddenly feeling like we need to get rid of the part-time attendant. I heard the argument that there's not a lot of places in the state that have attendants for their skate park, but I've also sat here and listened to the part-time attendant come and talk to us, and Heard a lot of anecdotal stories about how people appreciate and enjoy our park because they feel that it's got a level of safety, a level of control over potential bullying, a level of control over property damage, a level of control that wouldn't be there with simply a wireless camera. And I think that for the small amount of change here, it helps us to keep that equipment in better shape, make sure that people can come there, that parents can drop their kids off, even younger kids, to learn how to skate and play and enjoy the park without a concern for the safety of the kids or the bullying potential. Not that there is any there, but the potential would certainly be there if there wasn't the attendant. And so I prefer to keep that there. I don't understand why we're going to save $6,900. And that's the fully loaded cost, right? Because the budget line is smaller than that. I don't think it's a good idea.
Dan?
I'm supporting it because for a variety of reasons, but I feel like the dawn to dusk attitude is what's needed there. I put myself in a situation where if you have a kid who wants to wake up Saturday morning at 7 a.m. and go down to the park, he can't because the gate's locked. It just seems like we've got a great park, and we're really limiting its use by having the attendant who's on a fixed hours. So we don't lock up our basketball courts, we don't lock up our game fields, we don't lock up anything. But for some reason, this park comes with a stigma, and it needs supervision. So I'm against it for that philosophy. If some bad things happen, bad things also happen on tennis courts and baseball fields and other places. I would feel the police will do their job in monitoring it, like they monitor Wasserman Park, like they'll monitor any other Kids Cove Park. I just don't view this park as being special. It's a part of our park system, and it's the only park that has an attendant. And when you find out that 30 parks in the state of New Hampshire, and there's only 2 with an attendant, that was telling for me. So those are the reasons why I'm supporting it. I like the dawn to dusk attitude of having the park open freely to everyone who wants to come.
Here. Other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
4 in favor, 2 opposed. Mahana and Koenig opposed. Okay, next one.
Mr. Chairman, I would move the A&E Highway Garage.
That's for architect and engineering.
Architect and engineering, excuse me.
Otherwise, they'll think it's a TV channel.
Similar
And they'll think we're paying for James Lipton to moderate our meetings?
No.
Okay.
Watch too much TV.
Well, I'm glad people got the reference, so that's good. Mr. Chairman, I move that we appropriate $20,000 for the architectural and engineering consultant for the highway garage to be offset by a reduction in gasoline and diesel fuel in the amount of $21,775, which will result in an underlying savings of $1,775.
Second.
Okay, now that is not a reduction in fuel, it's a reduction in the cost of fuel,
Reduction,
correct?
excuse me, reduction in the cost of fuel.
Okay,
Thank you for
so we're
clarifying.
not buying less fuel, especially facing the kind of storm we're facing this evening and tomorrow. But this is to reflect the state of the fuel market these days. Okay, so that, go ahead, Finley.
When did you had told me before, was it November when we enter into our next contract?
Right now, yeah, it looks like October, November, the current contract will be expiring that we're in. What we do is we buy a block of gallons.
Right.
So if we buy 45,000 gallons, it's until we use the 1 year or until we use the 45,000 gallons. And it looks right now, October, November, we'll run into running out of that contract. We'll use all the gallons up for both diesel and unleaded gasoline. And when I looked at this, like I told you, I usually take 42 cents off the price at the pump. By doing that, and then adding a 25% increase, because that's usually been the market fluctuation from year to year, we're still have some built-in reserve, a couple of pennies here and there, so we can afford, if the price does shoot up a little bit, we have some latitude in the pricing
Yeah,
per gallon.
okay, right now we're 310.
Yeah, and that will get reduced
I mean,
down.
that's what you've,
That's what I did. It will reduce down to $2.90 a gallon for gasoline unleaded, and I believe we're at, what, 3.48 or 3?
diesel. I'm in a budget that doesn't have diesel.
Okay. I got one right here.
No, but I can get there quickly.
Yeah, we'll race you.
Shoot.
Oops, wrong way. And I'm projecting 3.48 for diesel. I think we're at 3.68 right now. So that will be,
Yeah.
basically 20-cent savings on both of them.
Okay.
Okay, so now you said you take a, what, 40-some odd cents?
42 cents, that is your federal and state tax. Municipalities do not pay that federal and state tax, so if you go to the pump, you're paying 42 cents, roughly 46 cents now with the new tax that went into effect as of July.
Get rid of the toll though.
Get rid of the toll. But, so I take that off and then do a multiplication on that, because that's what we actually pay on.
Okay. Other discussion? Yes, Tom?
Yeah, I was wondering if we could get a little more clarification on the amount of 20,000. Is that just a swag at something, or do we have some thought behind the 20,000? Is that enough? Is it, what does it get us?
It gets us architectural and engineering drawings that we don't have at the present time. And I've been assured in talking with Mr. McCallie that that's a reasonable figure. And as I said, I support this because it keeps the effort going. And I don't know what new drawings might look like, but in revisiting it, I suspect that there will be opportunity to perhaps revamp the general design as well.
Okay. We tried back, I don't know when it was, September or something like that, to allocate 30,000, if my memory serves me correctly,
I think we started at 40.
for a construction engineer to be able to take a look at the project and be able to come up with some solid and firm pricing and not to exceed numbers and be able to help us in negotiations that went on. The council decided not to do that. So you're only targeting an ability to get some additional architectural and engineering drawings or something like that done, not necessarily to hire a construction engineer or...
Correct. Correct.
Okay. I think we need to do something like that. I don't know that this is the right number to get the additional work done to try and make it better understood by the public. But I guess I'd rather put something in there now to work with than not have anything at all.
Paul?
I had conversations with construction managers. The one that I talked to said that he'd be more than willing to take it on spec, meaning that he'd take the job, and then once the bond got passed, he'd work his fee in that way. The architect engineer, they said that they could get a firm. Once again, they would do it kind of on spec. $20,000 would be good numbers because they'll have to pay some people to come out, look at the site, go out and get costing and things of that sort. But they would do the same kind of deal where they would give you architectural plans, so that you could at least get a good idea of what it's going to cost you to build that kind of facility. And then you go out and get bid, and they would make, in the bidding process, the architect would bid it, and they would make it up when you actually went out and got bonded. And that's where they would also come back with some of their costing and things of that sort. But most of the architects that I did talk to said they were all comfortable with a small amount of money and giving us drawings and giving us pricing on that. And the construction managers would take it on spec.
Okay, thanks.
Eileen?
I think the construction, we have a lot of information, and it seems like a small amount of money to add to it, but we already have an awful lot of information that we've paid for. And so even though it looked like all we had was a pretty drawing, there's a lot of things behind that. Square footages of rooms and, you know, how much per square foot is a mechanic space versus a locker room space and that kind of thing. So we have a lot of that information, and a construction manager could do a real nuts and bolts kind of approach to it rather than a pretty building with waterfalls and things like that, but it would be real, you know, just with the courtyard and a little mariachi band. But anyway, I think that the construction manager can come in and do what they call value engineering and ask us questions like, do you really need that many stall mechanics spaces, and find us ways to be more cost efficient and thereby presenting a project that the public would be more likely to embrace.
Other comments, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0-0.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the town council cut $50,000 from the paving infrastructure budget and reallocate that $50,000 as follows: $25,000 for legal and consultant fees as it relates to the Northeast Direct Pipeline, and another $25,000 to be directed to Parks and Rec infrastructure dedicated to Wasserman Park.
Second.
Speak to your motion.
I've already spoken about the pipeline piece. I think it's very important for us to have a plan, begin to have a plan in place and begin to thinking about the long-term impact that it has. I think the amount of money that's being appropriated is a good start so that we can begin to seek out and get the appropriate guidance, advice, and direction that we need as it relates to the pipeline. As it relates to Wasserman Park, I think I won't steal a little bit of Dan's thunder. I think Dan probably wants to speak to the Wasserman Park piece, but what I would say is I think, at least from where I sat, I think the Director Kasparias has done, in his inaugural year here in town, I think he's done a very good job, and he certainly has earned my trust to begin taking his vision, beginning to put
Our vision.
our vision, I apologize, the community's vision on Wasserman Park, and I think he's the right person. He brings the right dynamic to the table, and I think he gets it. And you know, we've already tasked him with $55,000 from a couple months ago. I think another $25,000 towards, you know, making the improvements and the changes that we seek. I think he's the right person to build a consensus as to what needs to be done down there. So that's why I support the additional appropriation for infrastructure at Wasserman Park. Thank you.
Dan?
Thank you, Bill. I think I speak for everybody, and all of us have the same vision there, because all of us have been together for the last few years and keep wanting the same things for Wasserman Park. So I think we did a giant step a few months ago by allocating the first $55,000. But as many of you know, there's still a lot of work to be done there. And this amount is a very small, it's a modest amount, but things like the raising of the Wasserman home itself, it just cannot be rebuilt. There's other projects on the list, the junior camp building, the boathouse painting and repairs. There's just several items more in addition to what Matt had spoken to us in the beginning. So I just think the $25,000 is a modest amount to keep going in that direction. And I would hope for the next few more years that we would keep funding money towards that area, because as many of you know, there were many years where nothing was being funded there. And so it's an important step that we keep every year, making that place better and taking care of what we have, which is really, I think, more the priority about the whole park is the phrase, taking care of what we already have. And without putting some money towards it, it won't happen. And again, the legal fees, it's just timing. I think it's appropriate. I think it's a modest amount, again, to get the ball rolling, to have some legal representation regarding a complex issue with the pipeline. And the paving infrastructure, I thought, was a small amount to get the whole package back to what I had said from the beginning. So I hope everybody can support it. Thank you.
Other comments? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Opposed.
Motion carries 4-2. Mr. Rothaus and Mr. Koenig opposed. Okay. Page 2.
Page 2, sorry. Mr. Chairman,
It's like Paul Harvey.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we appropriate a reduction of gasoline and diesel in the amount of $3,000.
You-
I'm sorry, go ahead.
You want
I'll
to, never
amend.
mind.
What's the
never
word that
mind,
I need to use?
Never mind.
You want to reduce the appropriation?
That's-
Reduce the
that's-
appropriation.
Yeah, I was going to reduce the appropriation for gasoline and diesel under the wastewater budget of $3,292.
Second, is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Based on price reduction, right?
Correct.
Okay. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Well, I'm sorry, Tom.
No, are we discussing, or are we voting?
We will discuss.
Well, we'll vote, we'll discuss after voting. It's fine with me, I just want to ask the question.
Okay, your microphone.
I'm okay with voting, I just had another question along this line.
And the question is?
Why are we only doing reductions for highway and solid waste when obviously police and others also use a fair amount of gasoline?
It's, I lumped it in as a various on the account. It's XXXX 8250, which means it would, when I run the budget through, it will reduce all those line items. And that was the total, $21,775 for general government. This $3,292 is just for wastewater.
Okay, so the previous one was not just highway, which is what it sounded like.
No, it was for all, the whole budget.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Move the question.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0. And that's because this is an enterprise account, we got to take it separately? Okay. Okay. We're done with that.
Can I make a suggestion?
Eileen?
What you need to do now is to look at the more complicated part, which is the part above the blue box. What you have done, the additions and subtractions, you have reduced the budget by $16,153 total, by,
Net on the tax rate is a reduction of
On the tax rate,
$16,153,000
okay.
on the tax rate.
okay. So, but what we need to do is, we have to remove as Finley was alluding to before, there's money that goes into the capital reserve fund, and there's money that comes out of the capital reserve fund. So when you make, so for instance, if you look at the stake body truck in the solid waste department, you would put $30,000 into the capital reserve fund. That would increase the tax rate. You would take $30,000 out of the capital reserve fund. That would not affect the tax rate. So, and the reason why it wouldn't is because there's a revenue and expenditure of equal amounts. So, since we're not dealing with revenues tonight, I would need you, in order to, as Bill would say, perfect the transaction, you would need to reduce the appropriation amounts in the amounts of $30,000 for the cardiac defibrillator, $54,000 for the communications radio base station, and $30,000 for the stake body truck, totaling $114,000. And we will also adjust the revenues correspondingly.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Rothaus. He waved his hand before you spoke. And I just have to be alert enough to recognize it. Okay.
I don't go to auctions for that reason.
Well, you were just asking a question.
No.
Is there any discussion on the motion? You all understand what it means? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay. What's the magic number? Any other changes that the body wishes to make to the budget? Understand that you can also make changes after the public hearing, which is part of the reason for the public hearing, is to get the input from the public and to consider that input and perhaps make some alterations in the budget. And then you have the same opportunity at the deliberative session, although that can be a lot of times driven by the residents who attend. Okay?
Would you like me to give you the total numbers?
Yes.
Okay. The revised total appropriation for the general fund is $26,622,920. The revised total for the wastewater, because it's been modified, is $3,888,865. All the other funds remain the same. These numbers that you see here are totals. So the media budget remains the same at $267,351, et cetera, going down. So the new appropriation for all funds is $31,472,126, which represents an 8-cent increase on the tax rate.
Okay. Is Tom?
Just for clarity, the union contract that we voted on last week is not included in here because that's going to be presented as an additional warrant.
That's right.
So it's not part of the operating budget at this stage.
And that's 1 cent.
Thank you.
And it may come out, for rounding, it may come out to 8 cents instead of 9 because of, we've reduced this by 16,000. But because it's $35,000, $29,000 for every penny.
Okay. So do we act on the total number or the individual numbers in order to
I thought it was total number when we go to the,
Satisfy the gods.
Total number would work fine,
Okay,
because that's what's going to show up on the MS7.
so that would be 31,472,126.
That's correct, I think.
Sure. I'm just,
I just,
126.
there's a couple of pages of email that were here on my desk. I was just wondering if I could get a quick description of why they're here, if there's some intent that we should act on these. We're apparently from the library to fall.
Those were the questions that were outstanding at when we discussed the library. They got the answers, and I received them today. I wanted to get them to you before deliberations.
Okay, thanks.
okay. Anything further? Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I would move that the town council recommend a 2015-2016 budget appropriation in the amount of $31,472,126, and that it be moved to town meeting? Or
Public
be
hearing.
moved to a public hearing.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Counselor Dwyer. Any discussion?
I will say that I want to thank Eileen and Paul for a lot of hard work. I want to thank the department heads for all their hard work in creating this budget, and I think everybody did a very good job. I don't think, Lon and I were talking offline, and I know Dan and I had talked about it, and it was very refreshing to have a budget that came in here, and throughout our deliberations, we had very little to talk about it. Very little to say about it. And I think it's a testament to not just the leadership we have in Town Hall, but also a testament to everybody in the departments that you run and maintain. So I want to publicly thank everybody for your hard work on this budget. Thank you.
Further discussion? Comments? Dan?
I hate to pile on, but I have to say thank you to all the department heads as well. I know Eileen may not be always the easiest person to work with, but she's,
Whoa.
I think we all know that
Haymaker.
her budget experience is really, I think, what makes her special for us, because they're just so well put together, but they wouldn't be so well together without your help in working together as a team. And I know everybody out there, that is the way you guys operate, so I really appreciate it from everybody. Thank you.
Okay, the motion is 31 million, whoops, I'm sorry. Lon?
Yeah, kudos to the department heads, to my fellow counselors. One of the parts of the process of my being in front of you tonight was an interview with these birds, and it was very thorough. And one of the questions I was asked is what I perhaps would say was I think it was the maybe biggest accomplishment or most favorable accomplishment of the council over the last year. My response was that it wasn't over the last year, it was over several years, that they have worked with management department heads to keep the tax rate as flat as it has been. And having been through this process at this table for the first time, not that I haven't been through budget processes before, but I have a recognition of how dedicated, of how hardworking, how professional, how much understanding there is amongst our management, department heads, and council. And the town of Merrimack should be very thankful and proud of all of them. Thank you.
Other comments? The motion is 31,472,126 to be moved to the public hearing on February the 12th. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0-0. Okay. Comments from the press? Comments from the public? Counselors, anything more?
Motion to adjourn.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Do
please.
drive safe. A lot of places were closing down early because the highway department was telling people they didn't want you on the road after 7 o'clock.
I get home, chief?
No, we're not on a state highway. So, stay in the urban compact and use the back roads and you'll be okay.
I'll second the motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all.